Healthy soil is the foundation of healthy plants, but how do we determine if our soil is actually healthy? Recently, I met Matt Wakeman, who is a regenerative soil consultant. He uses microscopic evaluation of the soil to give you personalized recommendations on how to improve the health of your soil. When he approached me asking about a collaboration, I was very excited because looking at my soil under a microscope seems... Oh, okay, buddy. Looking at soil under a microscope seems very cool to me. I am a scientist by training, and I love getting nitty-gritty on things and getting into the detail of how all of this stuff comes together, especially because microorganisms are so important in the overall health of our soils. So I sent Matt, I think 5 different samples of my soil, and we are going to go over what he found. The first sample that I sent to Matt is from up here near my road. This is where I planted my elderberry cutting and my fig tree cutting, and this area I sent in essentially as a control. This section of yard I did choose to plant in, but I have done nothing as far as amending the soil. This is just, I planted into exactly what I had here to start with. This spot right here is where I dug my soil sample from. You can see it's largely red clay, not a lot of organic matter. And let's see what Matt had to say about this soil.
Here we are at 100x, just giving you an overall idea of the aggregate level. You can see all those little bits and pieces of minerals in there. Couple of black clumps. But as the bacteria works on drawing all the nutrients and breaking down these minerals, they'll slowly turn into these darker aggregated clumps like these other ones here, making the soil more of a sponge. Alright, so here's the elderberry sample. We see some aggregates here, some micro aggregates, and you can see some fungal hyphae. They are clear hyphae, but they are making this micro aggregate and holding things together, forming that soil structure. You can see a good amount of bacteria in there, including some rods like this one over here. See if I can get a better focus on it. Those are the basilisk shaped. Yeah, trying to get the best shading and whatnot. A little bit more shading lets you see the bacteria wiggling around there a little bit more. But good healthy numbers of bacteria. We got a lot of round ones and rods, cocci and bacillus shapes. And we found a testate amoeba. It's only the first one that I found. Pretty much have fully scanned this first drop on the slide. And at least we did find one amoeba. Great facultative microbe to see. It's always a good sign. More amoeba the better. So this is interesting. Almost looks like this is a bunch of nematode tails. And whatever this is, they tried to eat it and all got stuck together. And whatever it is eating the nematodes. But there's a couple of fungal species that will trap nematodes like this and have them as their lunch. Here's a really nice looking hyphae. Pretty long, nice color. Whole bunch of septi in there that are visible. And down at the end here, we got this little club that is most likely it sporulating.
The next section that I sent in a sample from was the berry patch here. This section I started just by simply covering the existing yard with cardboard and piling on compost and then wood chip mulch from there. And that was a couple years ago. I haven't done a whole lot of amending since, although I do have my in-ground worm composting bucket here, and I was curious how that might be affecting the surrounding soil. So I took my sample from right about here, and let's hear what Matt had to say about that. Before we go into that, here is a close-up of what this soil looks like compared to the last sample. You can see it's a lot darker soil. It probably has more organic matter in it. It just generally looks healthier than that bare clay stuff.
Okay, so this is the berry by the worm bin sample, and already you can see a big difference besides the clay. And we see a ciliate. Despite this being so dry, we see a ciliate cruising around in there. And already you can see the difference in the aggregates. And we already see some nice fungal hyphae. There's not as many as those clear bits as there was in the clay elderberry soil. We see some good, really thick fungal hyphae there. Already a couple more strands. And mostly nice big aggregates like that one there. And you see now how in this soil, most of what's down there is all being aggregated by the biology. So at first glance, it's a much healthier soil and a better and a better gut biome for the plants. Here's a nice example of a very, very wide fungal hyphae. We're in at 400x. See the nice clear separations. And actually looks like we got a cluster of some yeast or some type right there as well. Decent amount of bacteria. And yeah, that's a good fungal hyphae. Right, so here is a nice large piece of organic matter that we're looking at 400x. You can see that it's organic matter because you got all these little lines and separations. It's looking just a little bit more tattered. And that's all the cell walls of the plant. Where your minerals, in other words your clay, silt, and sand, will look more like these pieces here. Much more round, and you don't really see anything that looks like a plant cell in there.
Next, I sent Matt 2 different samples from my main in-ground garden. This entire area, when I set it up about, I think it's 3 years ago now, it was entirely tilled by my landlord. It looked like red clay and rocks at the time. I brought in 5 cubic yards of really high quality compost to cover this area with, and then I covered it with the same wood chip mulch that the berry patch had. And I was curious if his results would be consistent across the entire garden, because this side of it is way more shaded, and also I tend to plant more legumes in this area than in that area. So I was curious to see what would happen. I took 1 sample from the base of my noodle bean trellis right about here, and another sample from about midway down my tomato trellis row. Now the soil over here at the, ran my face into a spider web, at the base of the noodle beans, you can see this looks again pretty dark, not really looking like that clay that we saw by the elderberry. And let me take you over to the tomatoes. Over here, what I'm seeing, it looks like a little bit lighter than the other area, but very similar to the naked eye in my opinion. And this is what we need the microscopy for, because I cannot visually really tell a big difference here. So let's hear how Matt compares these 2 different soils.
So here is a quick 100x scan of what's under the noodle beans. And yeah, we're seeing some great aggregation. A lot of those dark bits in there. Seeing a little fungal hyphae right there in the middle. And as we scan through, it's looking like a pretty healthy soil. Seeing definitely way more aggregates and bigger aggregates. Seeing a bit of fungal hyphae here and there. See some little pieces and it connecting everything together, forming that soil structure. And I'm almost seeing no strands that are clear and not uniform that could be a sign of fungal pathogens. So you're probably not seeing any soil-borne soil pathogen issues in this area, but still doesn't exclude you from the airborne ones. But it is looking relatively healthy, and the only thing it could use more of is good beneficial fungi, because it is far from a 1-to-1 bacterial to fungi ratio. So, yeah, with his motion like this, just I would say he has to be either a large bacterial feeder or a predatory nematode. Because I highly doubt a root feeder or a fungal feeder would be behaving like this and moving around so fast. They more sort of poke and search for a root to come into contact with. This guy's moving as fast as he can, like a predator would, to either catch bacteria or possibly run into another nematode or something else to eat. And usually when they curl up like that, they curl up so they can spring out and get their prey. Where the root feeding and fungal feedings, they just have a spike in their head that they could shoot out. So there's really no need for them to use all this energy to move their body in the way that this one is. But that's just from observation and my opinions. Oh, hey, Rotifer's coming over to say hello. Hey, Rotifer. Let's see. I've never heard of a nematode eating a rotifer. Didn't really seem interested. Much more life under the noodle beans here than anything else we've looked at so far. Alright, we got a whole lot of action here. We got a rotifer. We got a nematode. And let me get focused on it. Look at all these fungal hyphae growing out of this organic matter. And hopefully, yeah, you can see how they're growing along it and right down through it. Now, there's a chance that this is mycorrhizae growing right into a root, but seeing how they're so large, it would be the biggest mycorrhizae that I've seen. So it's likely just a saprophytic mushroom breaking down your organic matter and reducing it to a plant available form. Here is the rotifer at 400x, and look at those internals just pumping, sucking in all that bacteria, cycling all that nutrients. Yeah, look, he's turning things around in there. You could just see everything just getting pulled in by his cilia spinning around as he creates that vortex. Probably one of the scariest microorganisms out there if you're a bacteria. Because, yeah, I don't know what you would do if you were a bacteria and encountered this guy. Alright, here we are at the midway tomatoes, and we are noticing a lot bigger aggregates, like this big brown clump right here in the middle. The soil, as far as, especially even in the test tube, stuck together in big clumps, more so than any soil that we've seen yet. So that is a very good sign of biological activity and all those microbes forming those aggregates and making the soil like a sponge. So we're going to continue scanning through here. Do another vertical scan. Not seeing much fungi though. Even though we're seeing good aggregates, we see a little piece sticking out over right there. That looks like a beneficial. I'll have to inspect that a little bit closer at 400x. But definitely some nice aggregated soil. Good amounts of organic matter so far from what I'm looking at. Really cool looking minerals there. Alright, here we're at 400x, looking at a really nice fungal hyphae. That nice brown color, clear septums, connecting these mineral aggregates together. And yeah, I don't know, it looks pretty artistic. So I think I'm going to do a focal stack and try to give you an image here of all this in focus. But yeah, we're seeing very few of these good fungal hyphaes. We would like to see more. That's the only thing lacking. Here's an even cooler shot because not only can we see bacteria wiggling around all throughout here, we also have a fungal hyphae. So we got teamwork breaking this mineral aggregate down.
So lastly, I sent Matt a sample from this raised bed. This is my oldest raised bed. I have also had this for about 3 years now. And when I originally set it up, it was a bunch of logs in the bottom and then twigs and sticks on top of that. And then I put some unfinished bokashi compost on top of that, some more finished compost, and then a bunch of mulch. And digging around through here, this looks to my naked eye to be a little sandier. You can kind of see the grit in there. And also pretty dark. Definitely no trace of that really red clay in here. And, you know, that makes sense because I never started with any clay in here. So, let's see what Matt has to say about this.
Here is a 100x scan of the dark green vego bed. And there is definitely a lot of organic matter in here. I must say it's probably about 50%. Judging by the sentient image of just everything floating in the top and then a bit of sand in the bottom. So yeah, it's pretty much a mix, almost I would say 60% organic matter and then the rest is sand. So yeah, I definitely see this bed having some very interesting results. And we see some fungal hyphae coming out of these big pieces of organic matter. Oh, there's a nice fungal hyphae connecting these two together. And yeah, this is what a lot of organic matter looks like in the soil. Alright, here's kind of a cool shot. We're still at 100x here, so this is a very large aggregate. A bunch of organic matter. And up at the top here, this would be a big piece of sand. And we see a lot of fungal hyphaes coming out of here. We see a clear one, another strand over here. It kind of looks like a ribbon that could be microplastic, but also could be saprophytic fungi, which would make sense because of all this fresh organic matter. Very big fungal hyphae there. Or actually could be a root hair as well because of the size. It's not very uniform, but mostly seeing saprophytic fungi so far in here. Even though we're seeing some clear strands like this, I wouldn't be worried about, fungal pressure that much, just because you see a lot of clear saprophytic strands when there's a lot of organic matter. In your mulch, all that hairy stuff that grows in your compost, those are the saprophytes. Alright, we're in at 400x, and we found a massive amount of fungi over here. We got the light colored one, and now let's follow this brown one. Yeah, follow it back into the aggregate. We see all the nice septi, separations in the the fungal strand, and it goes all the way up here, connects into this one, then connects into this one, then keeps going. Let's follow it over all the way over here. And look at all this. Big swarm. And goes back over here into another aggregate. Yep, more organic matter, more fungal activity. Most likely this is all saprophytic fungi, but great reducers of organic matter.
I was really surprised to hear from Matt that fungi, specifically mycorrhizal fungi, is one of the things that I could stand to improve most about my soil. That's one of the things that I have definitely thought a lot about, and I thought I was doing a good job on, but it seems that I definitely need to be a little bit more intentional about introducing mycorrhizal fungi into my garden, essentially everywhere. In the Vigo bed, he said that there were some really good fungi in there, but they are mostly the kind that feed on that organic matter, that excess of organic matter that's in there. And definitely could still even use some mycorrhizal fungi, because mycorrhizal, if you remember, are the ones that specifically interact with plant roots and can network out to help trade nutrients to the plant for some of the sugars that it's producing via photosynthesis. And while it seemed like the difference between the noodle beans and the tomato samples wasn't huge, especially compared to some of the differences we saw in other samples, I thought it was very interesting that the noodle bean sample, which was in a more shaded area of the garden, had the most life out of all of the samples that I sent to Matt. I'm definitely really grateful to be able to have access to this detailed information, because without it, I don't know that I would have known how much more fungi I could really be adding into my garden. I would have thought that I was completely fine on that. And if you have the means, I really do recommend checking out Matt's website. You can also check out his YouTube channel. It's called Shooting the Soil, and I will leave a link to that below. And then through his channel, you can get to his website and check out some of the services he offers. And if you're interested in looking at even more of the footage that Matt took under the microscope from my garden, all of that is posted on Patreon. That is for my patrons. In addition to interesting content like that, patrons also get access to all of these videos early and ad-free, as well as sometimes extra content that I post only on Patreon. So you can check that out also at the link in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I wish you happy gardening.